Welcome. This is the Cheap Seats podcast presented by the Cheap Seats Media Network. I haven't said that in a while. This is episode 32 at this point, so we've had a number, but it's been a few weeks since we hopped on these airwaves. So it's good to be back. Hello, my loyal listeners, and many of them are my family. Hello. But we're back, and it is Tuesday, June 4th. Summer is here. It's getting hot. It's getting humid in Chicago. And the NBA Finals are just around the corner. So I thought, with this momentous occasion coming pretty soon here, I wanted to have my good friend Robbie Hodin on the podcast. He's a huge Celtics fan. He's from the Boston area, and I'm fired up to have him. I'm really fired up to have him because he loves basketball. He loves talking about the game. He knows much more about the sport than I do. But we do, and you could talk about it, Robbie. We do get in these conversations a lot. When I see you, in class, and I see you out and around. I love debating basketball with you. I love talking and picking your brain. So I'm fired up to have you here. Welcome on.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit there. You are a student of the game. We have some great conversations in class. Hey, Dom's family, by the way. No, but yeah, I'm excited to be on. My heart is already pumping.
Oh, great.
So I'm already nervous, even though the game's a couple days away. So
Yeah,
don't even want to think about what it'll be like once it actually comes around. But
yeah, hey, I know the feeling. I mean, you had this 2 years ago when you went up against my beloved Warriors, and
yeah.
I think I will tell a quick story. I think one of the first times we really interacted was in I think that sports commentary class, and you gave a pretty heartfelt defense of Steph Curry as being one of the best basketball players to play the game. And I just got so much respect for you, especially being a Boston fan. I know you witnessed it firsthand, really. 2 years ago. And I don't want to beat on this drum too much, but I am wearing my Chef Curry shirt just to have that luck charm here. But hey, this year might be different, sir. This year might be different. The Warriors went in a different direction after that, and Boston, and we'll get into it. Boston really retooled and kind of went all in, with the moves that they made in the last offseason. But I guess that's a perfect segue, sir. How are you feeling? I know you're nervous, but maybe how is this different than 2 years ago? Is it different than 2 years ago? Last year the Celtics have been climbing this mountain. It feels like for the last 5-6 years. I don't know, even before the pandemic, they were in the mix, late in the playoffs. And obviously the team has changed a lot, but their core with Brown and Tatum's kind of stayed the same. But how is this year maybe compared to other years for you?
Well, first of all, I think about Game 4, Steph Curry, probably weekly. Like probably at some point during every week, I think about what he did to us during that game. One of the best finals performances of all time. But I do think this team feels different. And I think the main thing for me, we're really getting right into the weeds here from the start, is like, for me, I think the end of game offense has really been a difference this year, both in the regular season and playoffs. Like you turn on any podcast, any show, any NBA show, anybody talking about the NBA or the Celtics, and they're going to be saying the same sort of thing. Like, well, tie game, a minute left. Jason Tatum's just going to take a step back three. Like they're going to slow down. They're not going to move the ball. And I think there's some truth to that. Like that has been sort of their Achilles heel in the past. And I think this year there's just sort of another level of execution and focus down the stretch. And I think part of that is Drew Holiday having like another veteran and not Marcus Smart. He's essentially just better than Marcus Smart in every way, making better decisions offensively.
Having a real point guard, like a legit actual point guard.
Exactly. I do love me some Marcus Smart though. It's not. But and then Kristaps obviously is another huge element to that, like just someone you can dump the ball into. And we actually got some news this morning that he's going to be good for game 1. So I think that's huge, and we'll probably get more into why Kristaps is so big. But I think the feel of this team is very different, and I think the main thing is sort of the end of game offense and the execution.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think that has definitely been a difference. I just think stylistically they play, with Missoula now. It was this the second year with Joe Missoula. Um, I just feel like they play differently, and they play like a style. They play like kind of the Harden Rockets. If that's kind of a comparison that I can make in terms of the amount of. I mean, obviously this is no surprise. They take a ton of threes. They take a ton of threes. And I think
Yeah.
it's really just the way they're built and the personnel they have, because they have guys that can shoot from everywhere. Even your bench players, Hauser, Pritchard, those guys can, and Horford when he when Porzingis is back, Horford ostensibly be off the bench. They can hit threes everywhere, and they play that way. And that's kind of what their offense is built around, right? It's cutting in the lane, it's getting penetration, then kicking out and cycling it around and taking advantage of double teams and different mismatches. And they take a ton of threes, they make a ton of threes, and that's really just like their MO. And I know we talked about this all year, because it can be their Achilles heel in some games if they're not making all of them. But I think they're unique because they have just so many guys that can shoot at a really high clip. And I think that's what that makes them successful. But I mean, in terms of the matchup, and we'll get into this too as well, with Dallas, and obviously Luka and the Mavericks have been on their own journey. This is Luka's sixth NBA season. He made it to the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago, lost to the Warriors during that run. And this is I think similar to the Celtics, this is a very different Mavericks team with how they're constructed, even within this season. The moves that they made at the deadline, getting Gafford, getting PJ, was it PJ Washington um,
Yep.
from
Charlotte.
Charlotte. Um, they've reinvented themselves multiple times. And I think now getting a full year with Kyrie next to Luka in this offense, I think they're really hitting their stride at the right time, and they took down some really impressive teams on their run in the West. But how are you feeling about maybe how the matchups and how the Celtics will square up against a Mavericks team that I think stylistically is pretty different?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with this will be the first series this season for the Celtics where they're not going to have the best player. And I think that's, you kind of just have to, like, that's just a fact. Luca, Luca is the best player in this series. And anytime a team has the best player, I think they have a shot to win. So you can look at the Celtics depth and say that they have, more guys who can create offense, more shooters.
Yeah,
They're the overall deeper team, obviously, but Luca, like I just see such a wide range of outcomes in this series just because Luca can win games by himself to a degree that very few other NBA players can. Like he's
yeah,
just completely in a league of his own. And so it's like, yeah, we have, I think we are sort of built perfectly to defend them. We have all these long wings. We have Drew Holiday. We have Derek White, best backcourt, best defensive backcourt in the league. And then we have Tatum and Brown, two great wing defenders as well. Like you kind of have the perfect guys to
yeah.
defend Kyrie and Luca, but does it really matter? Like I don't, I just don't see, yes, you're going to impact his shot. And I think, uh, actually Jaden McDaniels, like there was a lot of talk about how bad he was defensively. I thought he got great contests for 95% of that series. Like it's
Yeah.
just Luca is ridiculous. And Kyrie is ridiculous too. And so at some point it just comes down to them making shots. And I think going at them on the other end will be huge for the Celtics. You gotta tire those guys out and you have to make them play defense. I think Luca they've in every series been able to kind of hide him
Yeah.
on somebody. Whether it be he probably even guarded Zubats a little bit in that Clippers series, but just putting him on Giddy or putting him on a non-shooter, you
Kyle
can't do that
Anderson or
against
somebody.
Celtics.
Yeah. And yeah,
Kyle
against.
Anderson, exactly. Like there isn't a player to do that against the
Nope.
Celtics. Like if you put him on Derek White, if you put him on Drew Holiday, we should be putting. I say the
Yeah.
Celtics should be putting Luca in the pick and roll and making him work. I think the Celtics can make those guys work defensively more than the other teams they've played. So yeah, I certainly think it starts with those guys, but I look more to them on the defensive end, Luca and Kyrie, and how
Yeah.
we go about attacking them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because I think that's one of the strengths that the Celtics have is having, you know, five guys in a lineup that can threaten you offensively and create a shot, honestly. And that's going to be key, I think, for the Celtics to really jump ahead in the series is putting the defensive pressure and making Kyrie, making Luka expend that effort, and just try to get them tired somehow because they're going to have the ball in their hands on the offensive side. I feel like 90% of the time anyway, because I think it's either one of them creating the offense the vast majority of the time when Dallas is down on the floor. So they obviously command a lot of attention on that side when they're creating shots and creating looks for their teammates. But you know, when on the defensive side, like you said, they've been able to rest. They've played teams like you know like Minnesota, like the Thunder, that and the Clippers as well, that where they've been able to sag off certain players, right? And they've been able to
Right.
play bigger with Gafford and Lively and be able to defend around the rim. And the Celtics, I think, play it a totally different way. You know, they obviously, you know, have guys that can get to the rim and can finish there, but they really want to, you know, spread things out. Obviously, with Kristaps playing, maybe we can get into this now. You know, with him healthy, he's missed about a month. I think was it a calf strain initially, and you know, I think they're
Soleus.
what does that mean
Yeah, I mean,
medically?
nobody knew what it was, and then now someone else got a soleus injury too. All of a
Okay.
sudden, a soleus is like, what the heck is a soleus?
We need an athletic trainer on this or somebody in medicine because I don't think we're
Yeah,
qualified to talk about that. But in any case, he's taking a month off. They were probably cautious with him this last series, right? He could have maybe come back, you know, against Indiana, but the Celtics swept the Pacers, and Halliburton didn't play the last two games, although the games were close. I know closer than
yeah,
you would have liked to hope. You know, watching the Celtics get to the finals, but again, I think as you said, they've been able to you know execute fourth quarter late in games and really make shots. So but again I think that's the problem that the Celtics pose really truly pose to the Mavericks is, you know, where can you hide Kyrie, where can you hide Luka, who, you know, I've said it to you in this playoff run. I think Kyrie's stepped up his game defensively, and he's really, I think, exerting a lot more effort than I typically have seen him exert on
yeah.
that side of the floor. And you know, he's a little undersized for a lot of you know wings and guards here in the NBA now, so he can struggle with that. But if his efforts there, maybe that helps. But yeah, I don't think anybody thinks Luka's the best defender in the world. But he's big enough and he can get the job done. But I think just the ability of the Celtics to spread the floor, I think, really creates an issue there. So it'll be tough to see. It'll be interesting to see what the Mavericks do. You know, because I do want to get into this because like they've been different with Gafford, with Lively on the floor. They've been able to block shots and really protect the rim a lot. Do you see that playing a big role in this series, and how much, you know, how much stock do you put in those two being able to control things and to make a difference here?
Yeah, though, I mean, those guys have been phenomenal, especially Lively. I think, obviously, I'm not alone in this, but I think he's got an unbelievable future ahead, and Gafford too has been great. Like they have 48 minutes of great rim running centers,
Yeah,
and perfect guys basically to play with Luka. I think one thing you saw it in the Clippers and Timberwolves series is they would just stick Gafford or Lively on either Gobert or Zubats. And
yeah,
then even in the Thunder series, Chet was a little more reluctant to shoot threes than you would have expected.
hmm,
And I think how slow his release is was sort of a factor there. And
sure,
so basically throughout the playoffs, I think both of those guys have been able to sag off and hang in the paint way more than they'll be able to, even with Al Horford, let alone Porzingis, who is standing 4 feet behind the line and gets it off with the speed of a point guard. So
yeah,
like those guys are just not going to be able to play the normal rim protecting defense that they've been able to play throughout the entire playoffs, which I think is huge and is why I think Kristaps is very needed.
yeah,
More than even other people are talking about. Like I think obviously the Horford's gotten them to this point, but I think the ability to pull away Gafford and Lively from the rim and make them have to contest threes, not just like Chet, like having to sort of get out and put a hand up, but like
yeah,
really having to fly out to Porzingis I think is huge. And I think that's going to open up the rest of the offense for the Celtics. That's kind of, as you said earlier, that's kind of the MO of the Celtics is playing
Yeah.
5 out and getting the opposing team's bigs away from the rim and getting a wide open lane for us to attack. And then once they collapse, then you start getting the wide open threes. So I
Yeah.
think Kristaps will be huge for that. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't know if we want to switch to the other end of the floor, but I've got
Yeah,
some
no, I was
thoughts.
going to ask you, but do you feel like, with the lob that they have and the way they're playing with Luca and really putting pressure on the rim in the pick and rolls, do you feel like the Celtics are able to defend against that? Because I know, Kristaps is an elite shot blocker, I think mostly because of his size, but I don't know how well he is or prepared to defend against this type of offense that Luca creates, getting a guy on his back and having those options to either lob it near the rim or kick it out to the corners.
Yeah, and we also don't know what his sort of lateral
Yeah.
quickness is going to be like
Yeah.
in a drop coverage where you want to typically keep it like essentially 2-on-2.
Yeah.
Is he going to be able to move his feet? Like this is a kind of crazy welcome back to basketball moment. Welcome.
Yeah.
Now you have to defend Luca in the pick and roll in the NBA finals.
Yeah. And
So
I was gonna say for how good Horford is, I don't think he's presents any better option, in that defensive spot as the center, either just for
right,
his age and the way he can
right,
move.
right. I think what you're going to see the Celtics do, whether it be from the start or maybe they'll give Kristaps a shot initially, I think you're going to see some weird matchups. So I think you're going to see Kristaps on a Derek Jones or
Mm-hmm.
maybe a PJ Washington. My guess would be Derek Jones. But what that's going to do is obviously the Mavs want to get Kristaps or Horford, whoever the big is. They want to get them in the pick and roll, right?
Yeah.
Um, but if Porzingis is guarding Derek Jones, then that eliminates a lot of the advantage that Dallas gets from the pick and roll. Because why they're so effective in the pick and roll is partially because they throw these lobs to those two guys who are complete freak athletes.
Yeah.
And Derek Jones is too, but he's not the same pick and roll lob threat as
Sure.
either of those two guys. So um, basically what I think that change would do, and maybe you put Jason Tatum or Drew Holiday on Gafford or
Mm.
Lively, is you say, well, okay, first of all, if Lively or Gafford wants to post up Drew Holiday or Jason Tatum, go ahead. Like if you want to get out of your offense and
You
get
can
the
live
ball,
that way. You can live with
because
taking those offenses. Yeah, that kind
yes,
of
we will
approach from
live.
Dallas.
Like if Luca and Kyrie want to get rid of the ball and
Yeah.
dump it down to Lively or Gafford, we're fine with that. But what it will do is if you want to bring up those guys and set a screen with them, I think we'll just switch the pick and roll.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a way to kind of limit the lobs, which to me is the most dangerous. And maybe it's part just because it looks bad, but
Yeah.
like to me, that's the dangerous part about the Mavs is like when Luka starts getting into the paint,
Yeah.
shoots
Of
in, you
course.
can't tell if it's a floater or a lob, and it's just impossible to defend.
Yeah.
And I
Or
think the best
if
way
you
to
collapse, they got
right,
guys that live just eating off like Green and Washington and even Exum when he comes in, just live off just those short corner threes and
right,
it can really be backbreaking. So yeah, when Luka gets in the paint, that presents a lot of problems. And there's not really a way to keep him out of it, I feel like. Even if you can blitz him, but I feel like again, as you brought up, the switchability of the Celtics is what they'll try to really hang their hat on, because I don't think they want to send two defenders at him every time and
yeah,
play 4-on-3 the rest of for the rest of the court. So it is interesting. I think this is going to be a really fascinating matchup, more than other series, in recent memory. I feel like this is just going to have a lot of chess pieces moving. And again, as you said, I think Kristaps is a big key here.
yeah.
Do you think Dallas? I mean, I guess the last question on this kind of maybe getting in the weeds here with the matchups. Do you think Dallas goes smaller or will be forced to go maybe smaller just to be able to defend on the perimeter better? I mean, they have Kleba, but I mean, he's probably a slightly better perimeter defender than the bigger guys are, and he's a better 3-point shooter. So maybe that opens things up on the offensive end. But I don't know what you make of what Dallas might try to do to counter.
Yeah, I definitely think Kleba is an interesting wrinkle that the Mavericks have and kind of allows them to play a different way. Um, as a Celtics fan, I would welcome them going small. I think what they've found with sort of their 48 minutes of rim running centers to pair
Yeah,
with Luca has been pretty remarkable, and
yeah,
it's been like a kind of a cornerstone of their identity. And so if they want to go to Kleba, I would welcome it. I think that would open up a lot of stuff at the rim for the Celtics.
yeah,
I think, playing against the Celtics without a true rim protector is dangerous,
yeah,
as we've seen throughout these playoffs. So I would welcome it. And on the other end, Kleba, he doesn't look too good shooting the three ball. He had a shoulder injury, which
yeah.
he's coming back from, and it
Yeah,
looks weird. So I'm not really sure he's. If I would certainly start off the series if I were the Celtics, playing off of him and making him shoot
yeah,
because he did not look comfortable. And whatever, once he makes one,
yeah.
once it looks fine, then you start guarding him. But
Test it out a
I
little
would
bit. Yeah.
certainly, yeah, test it out.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because I just don't know, I was trying to go through that scenario of like how Dallas might be able to counter, but I don't know if they have like the perfect personnel to really like when they're playing against a team like Boston that spreads the floor so much. I don't know if they have the personnel to really counter that, especially at the 5 position. So that will be
Yeah.
something I'm definitely going to be watching, in the first game or two, to see how that goes and what Jason Kidd tries to decides to do on the defensive end. But I guess one other question I had is I know you brought up the depth for Boston, and they've had players like Pritchard, players like Hauser. I mean, even Xavier Tillman got some minutes, in the last couple games just because of the I guess lack of depth at the big position, the 5 or the 4. Um, I mean, it's really been heavy minutes for your starting 5 here. Obviously, Horford included in that, over the last month or so because of the Kristaps injury. But do you think that's ever going to play a factor? Do you think there's any sort of fatigue? I know they've had more time off between. They had like over a week off between their last game, in the Eastern Conference Finals and when the finals will start. So that definitely helps with the rest. But do you think like they have the depth to really contend here? Because I think Dallas does have some good pieces that they've been able to work in defensively and maybe are more, I don't want to say more versatile, but I feel like they just have a lot more size. I think you have Hauser, you have Pritchard, who are just I think just shooters. But you watch this team more, so I don't know. Can you tell me anything about the depth here and the guys in the reserves for Boston?
Well, I think the Celtics have continued to shrink their rotation. Some
Yeah,
people think it's going to be seven man rotation here
that
in the
makes sense.
finals, but I do think like they're a little different than other teams in the sense that the Celtics have so many players who can create.
Yeah,
And so, you can take Jason Tatum off the floor and then you think, all right, well, now is a big Jaylen Brown time. Like he's going to really have to um, kick up his playmaking duties.
hmm
And he's going to have the ball a lot more. But then Drew Holiday and Derek White are also on the court. So, like, I think just in general, you kind of get away with playing a shorter rotation more than other teams would just because the responsibilities are so divvied up on both ends.
yeah,
Because you just have so many guys that can do so many different things. So like they can almost get more of a rest on the floor,
yeah,
just by having Derek White run some more pick and rolls, having
yeah,
Drew Holiday take it into the post a couple possessions. Whereas on the other side, like, yeah, they can bring in Dante Exum and Josh Green and all these guys, but like Luca is still dribbling the ball 90% of the time and he's still tiring himself out.
yeah.
And same with Kyrie when Luca's not in there. So I don't worry too much about the depth. I do think
Sure.
with Al Horford, the depth is meaningful.
Yeah,
You start to see some of the old man legs coming out. Um, in these previous series, he was getting attacked a little bit, and I'm going to talk about this later actually
sure.
with one of my key stats. But
Yes.
I think having Kristaps be able to take some of those minutes, and who even if Kristaps is playing 20 minutes, like I think that will be big for Horford to decrease his minutes a little bit and then be able to give some more energy.
I love when you get an old guy, like somebody who's over the age of like 31 in the NBA, and then every time they do something good, it's like turning back the clock. It's like he's ancient, like he's gonna crumble at any moment. I remember that happening 2 years ago, so
Yeah,
it's gonna be even more heightened this series, in his more limited minutes that he has. But it's good for Al, man. He's still a true impact player on a contending title team. So hats off to him. He's been around forever, and
yeah,
he's impactful.
yeah. I think a lot of people would be, me included, would be happy to see Al Horford finally get a championship.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty indifferent about that, but good for him. I'll give him his flowers. Give him his flowers. No, that's a good point. I think the resting on the court, when being able to kind of defer to other players, right? It doesn't have to be all Tatum and Brown. Like 2 years ago, they weren't going to have Grant Williams or Marcus Smart, really control the offense for most of the game, right? They'll give Smart some of his touches, but and he'll have the ball in his hands and try to initiate the offense, but he's not the one that's going to be creating the shot all the time, right? So now they have a totally different sort of roster and the personnel, and I think it's part of just the way that they've. I don't know if you want to talk more about how the Celtics have gotten to this point with roster construction, with the moves that they've made. Um, because it feels like this past offseason was a big one for them, right? To you get to the finals, you lose the Warriors in 6 games because Steph Curry has one of those magical performances, and Andrew Wiggins has like a unicorn performance in terms of if you look at the rest of the context of his career, and you get beat by a Warriors team, and then you go back to the Eastern Conference Finals the next year, and Jimmy Butler has a tremendous series, and then all those role players just hit all the shots. And again, you look back and it's just like it could be easy. It could have been easy. I remember like there was a lot of discussion around that time, right, when the Celtics lost in the Eastern Conference Finals last year about like, do we blow it all up? Like, what do they do? Like, what do the Celtics do at this point? Like, they clearly can't win, with what they have, and um, I have to credit them because like obviously it could have been easy like to not pay Jaylen Brown. Obviously, I would have thought they'd been stupid not to because I don't know what the other option would have been. Like, who else do you get? Um, that plays that well at that position and has played with Tatum for this long and been successful. But they sort of trim the fat. I don't know, for lack of a better word, in terms of getting rid of guys that are beloved in that town, with Smart, Grant Williams he was popular, and during those runs he had a big personality, I guess.
Robert Williams, people
Yeah,
loved
yeah,
him.
yeah, Robert, yeah, all those guys, both the Williamses,
Yeah,
but again, they had all these pieces, like these reserve pieces, these guys, that played around, the core that you had, and they put it on the line and got Porzingis, and when Holiday became available in that trade, they were able to go out and get him again, and I think they just really sort of reinvented the roster that they had around the guys that they knew are, have had proven success in the playoffs. Maybe haven't gotten to that ultimate end and gotten to lift that trophy, but have really put them in that situation. So I want to say that I think the Celtics have done a great job this past year of retooling it. I mean, do you see it the same way? Were you satisfied with the moves that they made the offseason?
yeah. I mean, I was definitely a part of the don't blow it up group initially. I think like you do have to kind of at some point as a Celtics fan, you have to take a step back and be like, all right, every other team would, besides a couple, would love
Yes.
to be in the position that we were just in. And so blowing it up when you lose in game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, like you were pretty close
Yeah.
to making it to the finals. But I say that before I saw the deals that Brad Stevens was able to pull off. Like if you just look at what went out the door versus what we got back, um, I mean, it's just not even close.
Yeah.
Like we gave up, so we gave up Brogdon, Smart, and the 2 Williams, and got Kristaps and Drew Holiday, who are of those 6 players, the 2 best players, I would say,
Yep.
pretty handily. And I think with Porzingis too, that's the addition that really sort of changed the dimensions of the team. He gave us a rim protector, which we had in Robert Williams, but he was barely healthy.
Yeah.
He couldn't play that many minutes. Like he just wasn't. You couldn't really trust him on the defensive end, in terms of reliability. And so Porzingis is really the one I think that sort of changed the like the foundation of the team. I think with Drew Holiday, like you're kind of just, as I said earlier, you're just getting like an upgraded Marcus Smart,
Yeah.
basically. But Porzingis is the one that really changes the offense and makes us really able to go five out, and
Yeah.
that added dimension, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think for as much promise as Robert Williams showed as a big man, Kristaps, like you said, just brings a whole other dimension,
Yeah,
from his ability to play outside, knock down threes, but also, even Kristaps wasn't the most healthy, had the most healthy record as a superstar, but he was more healthy than Robert Williams was.
right,
He definitely had. I felt like he got hurt. Williams did in the most like inopportune moments in the postseason, and like
right.
just couldn't stay healthy long enough to really make an impact. So I agree. I think they, like I said, they made the right moves. I think to really like just extend this window. I think that they have, and they've certainly gone all in. I know people throw that term around, but I really think they did it this time, and they did it in a way that's I think sort of sustainable. With obviously like Tatum and Brown, they're still pretty young. They're still in their primes. They're mid-20s. And they're still playing great basketball. So I feel like they can afford to sort of do that when you have that core set in place. Right, you're
Yeah,
not sort of totally mortgaging your future. So I
I
don't know.
think
That's my
another
perspective on it.
I think another part of that is those moves were made, with in having in mind that, there is a trust in Sam Hauser and
Yeah,
Pritchard and Cornette and some of
it's
these
true.
bench guys who Stevens knew were going to have larger roles and knew that they could kind of slide into those larger roles.
Yeah,
So I think that's also um, been a pleasant surprise.
yeah. I feel like I've watched Peyton Pritchard play basketball for 2 decades now, just with how long he was at Oregon, and now
Yep.
him playing in the Celtics uniform. I'm just like, he's only was he like 25? I feel like
He's
probably
got to be
maybe.
older than that.
Yeah, I don't know. I just he's really not that old, but I feel like he's been around forever, and I don't know. He's really, I think he's picked up his 3-point shooting for sure. I think that's what
26.
they have him. See, 26. He's my age.
Wow.
See, I'm
Wow.
old, so yeah. I mean, you're not that much younger than me too. So he's basically our age. Um, yeah, I feel like he's been playing forever, but maybe that's an indictment on how old we're getting. But I'll change gears here. I want to go more first take debate show style here. Although I do despise that. Um, but I want to talk about, it is about the stars. And you mentioned that this will be the first series that the Celtics really won't have the best player on the court. And Luka's definitely that player. I think we both agree with that. But, he's playing with Kyrie, who's playing, I think, not, I don't want to say the best basketball of his career, but the best basketball in the last maybe 4 or 5 years of his career, really since those
Wow.
runs he had with the Cavs. Um, Luca's he averaged 34 and nearly a triple double, and he averaged about 30 points and almost a triple double in that last series against Minnesota. So he's playing, at the caliber you expect him to play. Although the entirety of the playoffs, maybe his numbers are a little more down than usual. But I think part of that is because Kyrie has been able to step up in spots where Luca, maybe get some rest, maybe just be able to do other things and distribute the ball better. So I think that tandem works pretty well. But they're going up against a pair that you've watched for many years now, and have I think have one of the, if not the most, like up the top of terms of playoff games together in terms of an active pair. I think
Yeah.
in the NBA, they've been through a lot of battles together. Again, they haven't been able to get to the mountaintop yet or to get over the mountaintop yet, but they've been in the playoffs a lot. They've been in these situations together, and I think I don't know. Jaylen Brown's playing some of the best postseason basketball of his career. I think he's shooting like 54% from the field, which is insane. But then you contrast that with Tatum, who I think is playing well, but he's struggling shooting the three ball right now. And
Hmm.
again, I think because of the way the Celtics play and because of the talent they have, maybe that hasn't come back to bite them. But I think I don't know. My thing is when it gets down to crunch time, they're going to have him make some shots because I think he still is, the focal point of this offense. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts in terms of this matchup because they will, presumably be defending against each other, being played, against each other in terms of just this backcourt matchup. But what do you make of these pairs and who would you pick in this series? I think I have a suspicion of who you think would be who you'd rather prefer to have going into this series.
I don't I don't love to look at it as sort of, and this is probably why you don't like the first take style, is because it tends to lack nuance
Mm,
and like, and this is, I'll just use an example. Like I
sure.
think Celtics could come out and double team Luca off of every pick and roll
Yeah.
above half court,
Yeah.
and Luca could end the game with 10 points, 4 assists, and 10 rebounds.
Yeah.
And he could be unbelievable because he just keeps giving the ball to the roll guy and then they play 4-on-3 from there.
Yeah.
So, like, some of it just depends on what the Celtics do and what they want the opponent's stats to even
Yeah.
look like. So from just like looking and saying, okay, we can't allow Kyrie and Doncic to score this many points, like I think is just sort of a lame way to look at like
Wow.
a team sport.
You're not taking my bait. You're not taking my bait. I guess I'm a
No,
bad
no, no.
debate show
I
producer for this.
I do think though the time where that 2-on-2 matchup kind of is most important is down the stretch when you
Yeah.
start to see more isolation basketball. You start to see the game slow down a little bit, and it shifts a little away from team basketball and more towards just
Yeah.
like individual shot making. And I think it's a tough argument to make that the guys from Boston are on the level of shot making that those, I mean, those are two of the best shot making guys in the league. I mean, like obviously we know what Kyrie has, maybe the most famous shot
Yeah.
in NBA history,
Yeah.
but has hit many clutch shots. Luca had one this playoffs and has had many before.
Yeah.
So those guys have balls of steel. Like I trust them more in the clutch moments than I do the Celtics players,
There you
and
go.
I think most people do.
There's the answer. I think that was a good answer though, because you're an expert. You wrapped the nuance in there. As we're we eventually got to the take that I was going to present to you is like who do you trust more to make shots down the stretch? Which I think it's Luca and Kyrie, but not to say that
Yeah,
I think Jalen and Jason can't make those shots as well, because I have seen them do it on a more consistent basis. Maybe not, but again, I don't think they might not have to make those shots, honestly, in this
right.
series, because I think just the way that the Celtics play. So I do like that you get a good explanation, because it is more nuanced than just the two of them going at each other. Although if you watch anything on ESPN nowadays, they will tell you it's just the two going against each other. But no, that's why
Yeah.
you know ball. This is why you know ball, because you're able to fold that in. Um, I don't know. Do you what do you think what do you want to see out of those two though on the Boston side in this series for them to have success? What do you think they need to do in this series for them to be able to beat Dallas?
Well, I always look, I think a good barometer for the Celtics as a team, honestly, is just Jason Tatum's individual defense. Like, I think you see a massive difference in sort of how he defends when he's really locked in and um like trying to stop someone versus when he's just kind of coasting. And I think if he can have one of these series, I always think back to that 2022 run, the way he defended Kevin Durant in that
Yeah,
first round, just like basically shutting him down, playing some of the best defense against Kevin Durant that Durant has ever seen in like a playoff series. And I think I would love to I would love to see some of that against Luca. I think that hasn't been talked about too much, but I think that's sort of a something up the sleeve of the Celtics that like when it really gets down to it, Tatum might be the best Luca defender with the size and strength that he provides. So that's the thing for him that I really look out for. With Jaylen Brown, he loves playing against Luca. We've seen it in the past. He really likes to go at him, and I think Luca will probably spend some possessions guarding Jaylen Brown. I do worry about Jalen over dribbling and
yeah,
the sort of thing when people, and this is actually what uh, doing a piece on this
hmm
for a class that we're a part of, but
let's go.
people see Luca and they think Defensive liability. Like, let me just go at him. And then Luka sees that other people think that. And he's like, oh, all right. Well, now I'm gonna actually defend you. And
Actually
when Luka
try.
puts his
Yeah.
and when Luka puts his mind to playing defense, like he's 6'8" and strong and smart and like he can defend
Yeah.
when he really wants to. And so I hope the Celtics and Jaylen Brown specifically don't get roped into just trying to go at Luka one on one. But I
Yeah.
do think you have to try and exploit that matchup a little bit
Yeah.
throughout the course of the game.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that brings me to another question that's been rattling around my head. Do you think Dallas goes more ISO in their offense because they don't want to? I mean, I know they want to. The way they play is right off that pick and roll, getting Luka downhill, getting him to, if he's doubled to get rid of the ball or have that lob threat. But if Boston is able to switch easily and able to really eliminate a lot of those advantages that Dallas wants to have, in that offense, do you think they kind of go more ISO? I know that you have a lot of good individual defenders, but I think Luka and his ability to create his own shot and to get really good looks against really good defenders. I saw some clips against him, beating Drew Holiday last, the two times that they played. I know that Boston won both games, but there were some moments where he was able to take advantage in an isolation situation when he doesn't have to deal with a second defender coming at him. So I don't know. That's just a question I will pose to you, and I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah, I think their offense certainly could devolve into just sort of
Yeah.
Luka switch hunting against whatever matchup he wants on a given possession.
Hmm.
And I think Luca's so unbelievable. Like there will probably be different points. Like he'll walk up one possession and Derek White. Like I'll shoot over him this
Yeah.
possession. Seems like a good matchup.
Yeah.
Oh, this time like I'm feeling a little pep in my step. Like I'll just blow by Drew Holiday this possession. Like he'll pick and choose and he'll figure out his matchup that he wants to go
Yeah.
to based on whatever's happening in the game. So yeah, I do think it could certainly just sort of end up being a switch hunting
Yeah.
game for Luka. And I think unfortunately Derek White, I mean it's ridiculous. He's a first team all NBA defender, and we're talking about how he's gonna be um like maybe the biggest liability defensively on the court because I do think he's gonna go try and go at Derek White
Just
and
kids need
use
a
his
little smaller, I guess, maybe just in
right,
size. Because I mean, Luca does. I mean, you could be a really good defender, but if you don't have the size to really
right.
get and bother him enough, that can be an issue, and he can
We
take
saw that
advantage
with
of that.
McDaniels.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
McDaniels just doesn't have the girth
The straight,
where
yeah, that's
Luca
exactly
just
right.
like Luca would just put him on his back, and
Yeah.
McDaniels just couldn't. He looked like a toddler on his like big brother's back trying to get around. It's like
Yep.
Luca's just too wide, and I
Yeah.
think Derek White, you could see something sort of similar, even though he's Derek White's like maybe the best in the league at sort of trailing from behind and getting those blocks and plays
Yeah.
like that, but not against
Because
Luca.
he's so wide, he's so tough, and he's so deliberate with his movement too. So he knows exactly where you're gonna come from when you're swiping. He can get that foul call too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a special player. So it's gonna be a team effort for Boston. But I just thought that might be an interesting thing. Maybe they go more to just having the isolation and see if they can take advantage of mismatches they have at that doing that on the offensive end. You have your finger on the pulse with what the Celtics fans are feeling nowadays, but what kind of reception do you think Kyrie Irving's going to get when he steps into the Garden for Game 1 in 2 days' time?
I think people are gonna cheer for him and
Standing O?
standing ovation, happy for what he's done for the franchise.
Are they going to have a are they going to have like a tribute video for him? Do you think before Game 1?
Oh boy,
Best moments.
if they had a if they had a negative tribute video, that would go over well. No, I think there's going to be the same booing that we've seen in the
Sure.
past. I In the Celtics media circles, there's actually been a lot of discussion about the other side and Kristaps
Mm,
going back to Dallas. Apparently, there's some bad feelings there with I guess Luca is the main one.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Didn't he
I,
say something about like not trying in the playoffs or something? Like he gave like some interview. I don't know if it was for Dallas though. I couldn't remember, but I think he said some things where like people are like, "What are you talking about?"
Who, Kristaps did?
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
have
he
to pull up
definitely
the
made
clip.
comments about, I mean, he's talked about how he was just sort of relegated to like the corner.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. I think that was
and
kind of along those lines is what he was talking
right,
about. He just was
right,
disinterested in that. Yeah.
right. So yeah, I think there's certainly those elements. I'm way less interested in those things than maybe the average fan. And
Yeah.
I
I figured.
personally, I would like us not to boo Kyrie Irving because I mean, he's gonna get off because he's getting booed, and more importantly, I think Luca loves Kyrie. Like you can just see it anytime he
Yeah.
talks about him, he like lights up, and Luca looks for any opportunity to go at fans and to be angry and to have a chip on his shoulder.
Yell at the refs, yell at Rudy Gobert, yell at
Right.
everybody. I love it.
And I don't want to give Luca, like I just know that Luca is going to take on some of
Hmm.
that trash talking, and you don't want to make Luca angry. Like you just don't. Um, the only way to beat Luca is to like somehow make him disinterested in playing the game and to tire him out or something, and getting him into it with the fans and building all this animosity, I think goes in the complete opposite direction. So
Yeah.
I would urge my fellow Celtics supporters to
Speak to him.
not boo, but I don't think that will do much.
Speak to him. And I will be clear here, Robbie. I just want to be transparent. If the Celtics do not boo Kyrie or don't boo him enough to my liking, I will say they're a bad sports town. I'm just gonna make that
Okay.
take. So just FYI for you. Um, but I honestly I do agree with you in some level because dude, it's been 5 years since he's been in
Yeah.
Boston. You know that they made the playoffs a few years. Yeah, he wasn't great, but like he was only there for 2 seasons, so I don't know. It just doesn't feel on the same level of like somebody who like was there for a long time and really had left a bad taste, in everybody's mouth, which he did. I think he was a different player back then. Do you see he apologized or kind of did an apology for flipping off Boston fans. He said that wasn't it was
Yeah.
a poor reflection on me. So he's growing. Maybe he's trying to
Yeah.
extend the olive branch. Let's see if the people of Boston take it. But I would be remiss if I
Yeah.
didn't ask you that question, sir. I had to do it.
Yeah. Of course. We had to be kind of like first take.
Yes, exactly. I just want to make sure I got those important questions in. Um, but you're too smart. You don't take the bait. I mean, I guess we talked about it a little bit, but one more thing before we get into maybe a different topic about this generation change in the NBA. But the way that Dallas has gone about changing their roster, and obviously like we said, they've done it in this season, really changing. They've got two guys that are now in their starting lineup, mid-season, and they're playing big playoff minutes. But they got guys like even beyond that this offseason. They got Exum was playing in Serbia, I think, last year. And they got him, and he's been, had some impactful, um, you know, minutes in this postseason, and he can hit threes, and I think he's been a good piece there. But I mean, they got Derek Jones Jr. from Chicago, who now he started 66 games this year. I mean, he's been a big part of their starting five. So they've been able to get guys in these, I guess, more not so much in a bargain, but they've been able to identify guys that I think play well with Luca's style, with Kyrie's style, and really just been a good supporting cast. So, what do you make of the way that Dallas has been able to um, sort of retool a roster on a fly? Really, just it kind of didn't take them long to kind of rebuild this thing, from 2 years ago. Obviously, last year they tanked to get out of the playoffs because they didn't want to get stuck in the plan and lose and get a worse draft pick. And with that better draft pick, they were able to get, Lively, from Duke with that trade with Oklahoma City. So they'd be able to set themselves up into that situation with maybe looking more long term.
Yeah. Well, I think it really goes to show then, like breaking news, it's important to have a really, really good best player. And I
Yes.
think when you do have a player like Luca who is so heliocentric and sort of the
Mm,
offense just runs around them, like you can kind of just fit pieces in here that are, and if they're willing to buy into sort of the overall game plan and the fact that Luca is going to have the ball for 80% of the possessions, um, you can build something really, really special. And like
yeah.
I think it's easier to roster build when you sort of keep that in mind and when you like really sort of go full force at building your team around a player like that, and sort of accepting that like that's going to be your style.
Yep.
So it's kind of a cop out answer to say like they could have gotten a ton of different players, but I think that's true. I think there are a lot of guys that could have fit in the roles that they're playing. Like you look at PJ Washington, like of course he was a bad defender in Charlotte. Who's going to play defense when you have nothing to play for? But like you bring this 6'8" great athlete who can shoot some threes and have him buy into his hometown team. Like he's gonna play hard and he's gonna
Yeah.
play well. And when he's getting 5 wide open 3-point shots a game because of Luka, and then he's also getting 5 drives off of closeouts from Luka. Like he's getting his whole offense from one player. And so it's helping him feel comfortable, and then it's helping him focus, I think, on the things that are actually going to help them win games, which is filling out all of the holes in their team, playing defense, running the floor, etc., which is what those guys have done. So I think with Gafford, PJ Washington, Derek Jones, like they've all just kind of bought into Luka ball.
Yeah.
And um I would too, man.
Yeah.
Like
I was gonna say, why would you not? Why would you not? I think
you
he
play
makes it so
defense and
easy for
then
everybody. Yeah.
right, you sit in the corner and get shooting
I
practice. Like
guess you have
it's
to enjoy sitting in the corner for, on offense,
sure.
which I guess maybe Kristaps didn't like that, but for these guys, I think the guys that they brought in were never really superstars, right? They were guys that were kind of just, they're
Right.
good role players, maybe good starters in a lot of different teams, but I think are wired to be able to do what they need to help the team. And I think,
I won't-
credit to Nico Harrison for getting guys that like maybe weren't in the best situations. And you talk about Gafford as well, coming over from Washington, right? And maybe didn't have the best numbers, but just got guys that have the size, have the requisite like kind of playing style that they want to surround Luka with, and being able to put it all together at the right time. And then for them to, what are they, like 26-3 to end the season or whatever, when they had this starting five, and obviously they've been potent in the playoffs again, getting past a lot of really good teams and a really good. I mean, they played a lot of younger teams. I know the Thunder are super young and haven't been tested, but they were the best team in the West this year. They were the 1 seed for a reason,
Yeah.
and they beat a Clippers team that, again, it's just like we were talking about this too. Like Kawhi has not played a playoff game, or like hasn't been healthy for a playoff game. It feels like in a decade. But they were able to beat a really. I thought the Clippers were kind of poised to go farther than just a first round exit. But I think that matchup was just bad for them. And then they beat a Minnesota team that literally knocked off the defending champions, and came back from they're down 3-2, and they're up 2-0 in that series. They were down 3-2 and came back and won in pretty stunning fashion in the last 2 games. So I don't know. Credit to the Mavs for doing this, and I think a lot of it has been Luka and Kyrie. But I think so much of the story is like, I watched games, and I'm like, Gafford's like the best big on the floor with Cat and Gobert on the other side, because he's I think his impact on defense is just more for against Minnesota, that wants to get to the rim and wants to create those chances there, and he's been able to snuff those out, and he's been a really effective runner for them. So I was just surprised with how effective like Lively and Gafford have been for them, and just that supporting cast.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to make it seem like you can put literally anyone in
Yeah,
those
yeah,
roles, because those guys have been excellent. And I think like a lot of people aren't willing to take on the Luka Ball
yeah,
role player
yeah.
role. Like a lot of you just said, Kristaps wouldn't do it, and there are tons of other NBA players who wouldn't do it. But this is what it looks like when you do buy into it. And I think you mentioned it. Part of that, I think, is getting guys from terrible teams. Is like they come from these teams that aren't winning, and then you have an opportunity to like, if you play this role well, to be a part of a winning team, and it's an attractive sort of offer. And Gafford and PJ Washington specifically have done exactly
Embraced it.
that.
Yeah, they've
Yeah.
embraced it. They've embraced the opportunity. I think they were just happy to get out of Charlotte and Washington, because it feels like those are tough places to play right now.
Sure.
I want to take a step back, and we'll get back to this finals shortly after this conversation. But I do want to have this conversation with you because you're such a big NBA fan. You're a big follower of the game. You know the game so well. I think I come of it with a little more cynical perspective. I think I'm a football guy through and through. I love football. That's the game I consume all the time. I do like watching basketball. I do enjoy watching my Warriors, but it feels like we're at such an interesting time in the NBA with this finals specifically. I think, Dallas is going back for the first time in, over a decade for them, and the Celtics have a chance to win a finals for the first time in over a decade. It's been about, was it 15, 16 years now since '08. So it's just been, I think that's good for the league because you have these two, I think, pretty big brands that they're back to kind of being at the forefront of the game. And you have Luka and you have Tatum and you have these stars, but I feel like there's a little bit of a shift this year, and we saw it, with the Oklahoma Cities, with the Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves. You saw it with Tyrese Halliburton, the Pacers. Out of being one of the lowest payroll teams in the league, going to the Eastern Conference Finals, and you had the Warriors flame out, you had LeBron flame out early, and it's just like I feel like there's this shift happening, and it's been happening. It happened last year as well. You have Jokic and the Nuggets really coming up, but Jokic had been a good player, I think, for a long time. He won an MVP, before he won a finals. So what do you make of what's happening in basketball right now with the shift in maybe players getting younger? There's really talented players. Is there? I think we're really quick to anoint somebody as the face of the league. I think in the case of Anthony Edwards, he was a phenomenal player, but I think he's super young still, and I don't know if he's like necessarily at the level of guys like Steph or LeBron that can like really transcend the sport. But I know you don't get those players all the time. So I just, this all is to say, I want to get your take on where the future of the NBA is going, what the future holds, and what do you see from the NBA in general in basketball?
Um, yeah, there's a lot of stuff there
Yeah.
to unpack. Well, first of all, I think hold the phone. I think Victor Wembanyama.
Mm,
Well, I mean, this isn't a hot
I
take. He's
should
the
mention him.
future.
Yes. Yes.
He's the
That's a good
future,
point.
and I think he's sort of like, yeah, like Anthony Edwards isn't like he's an incredible player, but he's not necessarily doing something like Steph and LeBron, like where they're doing something so different than
Yeah.
anyone you've seen before. Steph with his shooting, LeBron with being that large and that athletic at the
Yeah.
same time. Wembanyama is doing that. And
Yeah.
so I think he's sort of going to be the leader of that next face of the league. And I think it's probably going to be next season. I think he's going to
Sure.
come in. Were you a part of the table where I was telling you my hot take recently?
No, I want to hear this. I want to hear this.
Oh, so I think that by the end of next year, Wemby will be the best player in the NBA.
Mm.
I think he'll
Okay.
I think he'll start the season as a top 7 player, something around there. And I
Wow.
think given what you saw from his improvement last year, from like the first half to the second half, if we expect anything even close to that, he's gonna just continue to rapidly improve.
Mm. That's
But
hot.
yeah,
It's a hot take.
hot
I don't
take.
think I think he will eventually get there. I think obviously with
Yeah,
where things are going, but to be as soon as next season,
I'm
that's an interesting
early.
question. I
I'm
think it's
I'm
going to
I'm
depend
early.
on, yeah, it's going to depend. I like it. It's better to be early, I guess, than late. Um, but I think it's really going to depend on what the Spurs do, right? How they reconstruct this team and try to win some ball games and have a real point guard, baby.
Right,
I think
right,
that'll definitely be a part of that because they were just so irrelevant as a team this year. I think that kind of diminished Wemby's star a little bit, but again, it's his rookie season. He's still learning the NBA a
right,
lot, and he's so young. He's so young.
right. But I mean, to answer your more general question,
Sure.
there is absolutely a shift happening. Like to have a playoffs where Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant,
Yeah.
none of the three of them are like a focal point. I mean,
Mm.
obviously the Suns
None, yeah.
they got swept, right? Yeah,
Yeah. None of them made it out of the first round. Yeah.
right.
Warriors got one playing game. They got destroyed. So
Right. So like obviously that represents a sort of shift. But let me just list off these top 5, what I think are probably the top
okay.
5 players in the league right now, and tell
Okay.
me if you notice one common thing
I
about
like
them.
this. Let's make a list. I like lists are always good. People like lists.
Lists and trivia questions. Nikola Jokic. Luka Doncic, Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and
Mm,
Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Notice anything about those guys?
wow, they're all foreigners. They all weren't
They're
born here.
all they're all foreigners.
Wow.
I mean, we had, I think, Steph, LeBron, and KD for the past however many years have kind of held the reins as like the best guys of the pre-generation,
Hmm.
all American born guys.
Yeah,
And all the best players now are foreign guys, which I think represents another change that you're seeing, and the game is becoming more and more global, and there's just a wider pool of talent. Um,
absolutely.
and I think when you combine that with the fact that guys who are coming into the league are, I think, as prepared as they've ever been. Like the game, the youth game, and the college and high school game more closely mirrors the NBA, I think, than ever before. Like you see these young kids shooting deep threes and whatever. Yeah, it's like ridiculous. Like why are young kids shooting deep threes? Why do they think they're Steph
You
Curry?
have centers shooting threes. You have big men being able to spread the floor as well. It's not just, the NBA obviously was quicker on the, now you have the 4 and the 5, spacing the floor a little bit more and being able to shoot from outside. But I feel like for a while, like that, it took a little bit for, I mean, college still has to catch up a little bit to that. I mean, you had Edie being the player of the year and he's just like a post up
Right,
center. So
right,
it's like different, but now, like you said, the high school game maybe is catching up to that, and maybe we'll see that
right.
wave kind of come through.
Yeah, yeah. I think the transition from earlier levels of basketball to the NBA is getting easier and easier, and you see
Sure.
that with how successful rookies are when they come into the league. Like these guys are, it's, I mean, look at this year's class. Like you have these three big men, Chet, Victor, and Derek Lively. Like Derek Lively would be a um rookie MVP.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in other years.
Yeah.
He's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
But he's not even, like, he gets completely overshadowed by these two big men who are already stars in
Yeah.
their rookie seasons. And we've seen that with plenty of other players too. So
Good point.
I think yeah, there's definitely a changing of the guard, and all those things are factors.
Yeah. Maybe this is a meta point. I guess this is me, coming from maybe an NBA skeptic in terms of, how I feel about basketball. I've talked to you this many times. I think the refereeing pisses me off a lot of times. I think they
Yeah,
just I like it a lot better in the playoffs. I will say that because I feel like they totally changed the way that they call games in the playoffs. They let a lot more physicality go, which is just I think personally for me how I want to watch the game more. I
yeah,
hate watching free throws. I hate watching guys throw their headbacks when they drive and get fouls all the time. It's just not a way that I want to watch the game because the guys are so talented. Because I want to make them fight for shots. I want to see them scrap on defense. I want to see the effort be there. I feel like if you're calling fouls so easily and getting guys to the line so many times, obviously their incentive is to do that and to get to the line and have the numbers go up. But it just like, I want to see them play basketball. I want to see a better product. So I don't know. All this is to say, I come from this perspective of like, I don't know if the NBA is going this right direction, but I think it's exciting because you have all these great players, great young players that are going to be, really be able to carry the torch in terms of like who the superstars are going to be later down the line. But do you think that, that'll dilute maybe just I don't know how the best way to say it is. I think if you're really a true NBA fan, you're going to watch regardless. But like, if you're trying to get the casual people involved, like who's that guy you point to watch? And I know you listed Victor Wembanyama, and I think that's actually a good example here in terms of a guy that I think people will tune in to watch. I like tuning in to watch Jokic because he plays the game in a beautiful way and can do so many different things. But like when you have I guess foreign players that maybe people aren't super familiar with. Maybe the casual fan isn't super familiar with. Maybe they aren't marketable in the same way. I mean, Jokic literally just started doing commercials. I feel like this year, and you really get to see like some of his personality. I think that's going to be
yeah,
beneficial for him. But do you feel
yeah,
like that's a part of it, right? Where if the NBA wants to keep that interest, they're going to have to like I guess market their players better. And I think it's a little harder when you get guys that aren't that weren't born here, maybe haven't navigated this kind of market yet with this whole
yeah.
media machine that we got going on.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think there's also something to like Steph Curry was so marketable because what he did was so new,
Yeah.
and now it's not new anymore. So
Yeah.
you got to kind of find like what the next new thing is. And Wemby's sort of new thing of just being like so large, so much larger than everyone else is just sort of like less fun to root for than
Yeah.
Steph Curry's being such a better shooter than everyone else, which was sort of
Mhm.
the last like new thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do think there's an element of like marketability that's tougher.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's because of the foreign aspect, but I mean, maybe it is. Like for me, that has nothing to do for
Yeah.
me with like why I enjoy watching certain guys. In
And I
fact,
should I should clarify. I think I'm the same way, but that doesn't mean anything to me. I think I'm going to watch because
right,
they play really good basketball, and
right,
you could see I'm locked. I see their their post game, their press conferences. I'm on social media. I get to see like who they are and how they talk about
yeah,
the game. But I think obviously for the more casual observers, for the American audiences that are like, is Steph playing? Is LeBron playing? Is KD playing? Like I don't know. I don't know if that like presents an issue for the NBA, but it feels
yeah,
like maybe that's something that's coming down.
yeah. I mean, I think Anthony Edwards could definitely be one of those guys. He's got a pretty vivacious personality. He gives a fun interview,
Yeah.
so I think he could be one of those guys.
Yeah.
Jason Tatum doesn't give the most fun interview. In fact, he
He's a
might
nice
be the most.
guy.
Yeah, he's a nice guy, but he might be the most boring interview in the NBA.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I don't think there are as many American born players who are like obvious sort of
Yeah.
next guys up.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the next guys up are foreign guys,
Yeah.
just for the way it is.
Yeah. I think it's really good for the game personally because I just love seeing guys from other countries and just again like the talent pool, as you said, it just makes it bigger. And I think you get a lot of to watch a lot of guys maybe you wouldn't have seen play, 20 years ago, right? So I'm excited about it. But I always find it fascinating like who the league wants to market next. And it feels like Anthony Edwards is that American player at least that they're trying to really like push.
Yeah,
Which I get it. He has a hell of a personality and he says some wild stuff sometimes and it's amusing. And he's a
right.
good player. He's a really good player and he probably will get better because he's still super young. So um yeah, I appreciate you having that discussion with me. I love talking about the state of the NBA. And I know they got a big TV deal coming up next year, and we may lose our beloved inside the NBA crew
Um,
potentially, which would be sad. But Roundball Rock and NBC might be making a comeback for all the people that love '90s basketball.
there you go.
Robbie, I appreciate it's been a great conversation. Let's finish up with your. I asked you, I tasked you because you're such a basketball savant and you're been crunching the numbers. You love crunching the numbers. Give us 3 stats, indicators, things to watch going into this series that you think people should be paying attention to when they're watching the Mavericks and the Celtics go head to head starting on Thursday.
Well, Dom, I've actually only got one stat.
Okay, that's fine.
I have two other nuggets.
That's fine. Love
Um,
Nuggets. I did put Nuggets down. I forgot about
you
that.
did put
Yes,
nuggets down.
love Nuggets.
I would like to throw out there. Um, I'll start off with the stat. I think the corner threes are huge. Mavs are number 2 in the playoffs in corner threes attempted.
Wow.
Celtics give up the second fewest corner threes. So that's
Oh,
sort of a huge part of the Celtics game plan is to allow teams to take those above the break threes, but not allow them to get those corner ones, which of course those are a little bit shorter and tend to
sure.
be that's like one of the best shots in basketball, the corner
Yeah.
three.
Yeah.
And what Luca and PJ Washington and Derek Jones have made a living on
Yep.
in these playoffs. So I
Wow.
think sort of how the Celtics navigate that and how they try and force the Mavericks to take above the break threes instead will be key, and what the Mavericks do to combat that. I think that will sort of be a big inflection point in the series, whether these role players are able to tee off from 3 in the corners.
That's a great pull. That's a great pull. I think that's again something that you could really watch if you're just watching the Mavericks do work on offense. Can they get those corner threes? How do the
Right.
Celtics defend? Luka coming into the paint or Kyrie coming into the paint, and are they taking away those outlet passes over to the corners, and are they closing out hard on them? So that's definitely something that we can watch.
Yeah. Second nugget here, we're gonna get
Yeah,
really, really obscure.
let's go.
I want to see as many possessions as possible of Peyton Pritchard guarding Kyrie Irving.
Mm,
I think Pritchard's defense is wildly, wildly underrated.
okay.
I think against certain offensive players, specifically very obviously shorter, very quick, great ball handling guards. Pritchard tends to slide his feet better than I think anyone on the Celtics. Yes.
Yeah, he's good
Yes,
at
I'm gonna say that.
fundamentals. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think like
He
yes.
hustles. He works hard.
No, 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 no,
No,
no.
I'm just
Not
playing.
the not the not the it's not I don't think it's a working hard thing. I think
No,
his lateral quickness, I think, is the best
yeah.
of anybody on the Celtics. I truly believe that. And I
I'm
think
being facetious. I haven't watched. So you obviously are way more locked in on how he plays defense. So this is actually really interesting to me. I did not know that he was this kind of defender.
no, I think there are certainly a lot of people who would call me an absolute idiot for making this take. But I stand by it until the end of time
Hell yeah.
that Pritchard Pritchard is not going to get beaten off the dribble. Um, Kyrie Irving is going to beat, I think, everyone else pretty consistently off the dribble, no matter how good of a defender they are. And yeah, sure, Derek White can make some plays from behind, and same with Drew Holiday, and maybe the size can have a factor, but I don't think those guys are going to be as able to stay in front of him.
Wow.
And so I think it's a nice change up to have Pritchard just be a pest on Kyrie and force Kyrie to shoot those, you know, fadeaway jumpers over Pritchard
Mm.
rather than getting by him. So that's my second nugget. I would
Is
love to
he
see Pritchard on Kyrie.
is he going to be the Matthew Dellavedova of this series? Is he going to go to the hospital?
I could
They're gonna
see it. I
they're
could
gonna,
see it.
they're gonna put
Now,
an
maybe
IV
not
in him.
enough minutes. Maybe not enough minutes for a Matthew
Yeah,
Dellavedova, but
yeah, yeah.
I would love to see it, man. I
All
would
right.
love to see more Pritchard.
No, I'm gonna be locked in on this. Every time he's on the floor, I'm gonna be seeing who he's gonna guard. If they put him on Kyrie, what that looks like. We'll keep a tally.
Awesome. Third nugget here.
Let's do it.
I think this is a huge, huge, huge nugget. Probably should have said it first. Um,
That's a good one to end on. Let's do it.
yeah, it's a good one to end on. Horford, I think, is huge
Mm,
in this series for this reason. I think you saw some of the deficiencies of Horford throughout these playoffs because he's had to play so many minutes. He's been attacked pretty mercilessly
yeah.
in the pick and roll, and in isolation by Donovan Mitchell, by Tyrese Halliburton, by Andrew Nemhard, by
Mm,
Pascal Siakam. He's been the guy that teams have gone at, and I think it's sort of a weird thing for a Celtics fan to see because Horford is typically really good in those situations in isolation possessions, especially for sort of a bigger guy. He moves his feet very well.
yeah.
And I think fatigue was a huge factor in those situations. And so I think when you get Horford back into his bench role, back into 25 minutes a game, I think you're going to see him start to defend those isolations and those pick and rolls a lot better than he did. He'll be a
Yeah.
lot more fresh. And I think that will be huge because I think both Kyrie and Luka are going to go at him. And rightfully so. He hasn't been that good defensively in these playoffs. And so they're going to go at him thinking that they're going to sort of be able to do what Donovan Mitchell and some of these other guys did. But I think Horford will be a little bit more fresh, especially with the break and with Porzingis coming back. And I think that will be pretty huge for him. He's sort of getting back to what his optimal role should be, and I think that will pay dividends for him.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. The fatigue factor definitely played a role in that because of his increased minutes with Porzingis being out. Do you think Dallas hunts Porzingis when he's on the floor as well? I know he's obviously has so much more length and maybe but maybe because of his injury, coming back from his injury, maybe he's a little bit lacking lateral quickness. I know we mentioned it, but do you think that's the position that Dallas tries to go after no matter who's on the floor?
Yeah. Well, I don't think the Celtics are ever going to switch Porzingis onto Luka,
Yeah.
which is why I would love for Porzingis. And again, we will see this at some point during
Hmm.
the series. I'll be interested to see whether they start out in it. But
Sure.
I think putting Porzingis on either PJ Washington or Derek Jones is kind of a way to not allow them to hunt that, because
Sure.
what it's doing is, okay, if you want to hunt Porzingis, you're going to have to do it with PJ Washington or Derek Jones as the roll man, as opposed to Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford, which
Yeah.
is just way more dangerous. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I do think Luka will still go at him in those situations, and he'll get Derek White on his back, and then he'll shoot the floater over Kristaps Porzingis. But I don't think it's going to be as easy as if Porzingis were guarding Gafford or Lively. So I think that will
Got
be
it.
an adjustment for the Celtics.
Well, Robbie, I think you've made us all smarter having listened to this. I think usually when people tune into this, they usually become dumber listening to me talk. But I think you've made people smarter. And if they're tuning in just to escape the rigors of everyday life to watch this NBA Finals, I think they're going to have some good things to at least look at and to maybe consider watching this series. The one that I'm excited for, I'm personally excited for. I'm very much going to be right down the middle. I don't really care who wins this series. I don't really root for either team. I like some of the players on both these teams. I don't like Boston. I'm sorry. You guys just went. I mean, it's been so long that Boston hasn't won a title. What has it been, like 6 years now? Who's the last team to win? The Red
We're
Sox.
pretty we're
18.
pretty good at we're pretty good at sports. Yeah. Were you going to ask me? How about my
Yes,
favorite sports memory?
absolutely. I'm getting there. I think it's a great way to close it.
Okay.
A great way to close it, because I think with this series, again, I don't care who wins, but I would love to hear the favorite memories that you have. Again, it's either something that you playing personally in a game that you played, in a game you watched, a game you're at, but
Oh,
anything that you want to choose from that just sticks out in your mind. It's just like that's the moment. That's why I love sports.
well, I didn't think of me playing. I only
Mm,
I only considered professional sporting events. So I'm just gonna go in that
yeah,
direction,
sure.
and I'm gonna shock the world here.
Whoa,
Not a basketball one.
no way.
Malcolm Butler's interception in the Super Bowl. I don't even know what year it was. Seahawks
14. I think it was, well, February 15, I believe.
2015. Wow.
Yeah, I think so. I'm
Um,
pretty sure. Yep.
my family has a yearly Super Bowl party.
Okay.
Ever since I was like, however, whatever, for as long as I can remember, we've had a Super Bowl party.
Yeah.
I just remember vividly, like everyone sort of sinking into their seats. Uh, once whoever it was, Curse, I think, made that
Yep.
catch down the field, and it was
Insane
like,
catch.
is this really how it's about to end? And then I just remember Malcolm Butler's interception and just absolute chaos, screaming, people like running around outside. Just one of the most incredible sports memories. I think the fact that I've been a Patriots fan through that and the Falcons comeback are
God.
two pretty incredible moments. Nothing that I've experienced basketball wise really, in terms from a fan perspective, really
Sure.
compares to this. I don't think.
Yeah. Hey, maybe in 2 weeks time, maybe that changes. We'll see. But no, that's a February 1, 2015. One of the few times I was rooting for the Patriots in a Super Bowl, because I hate the Seahawks. I hate to see them have any success. And I was when Curse made that catch, I wanted to throw something at the TV, because I just can't stand to see that team have any success. And thank you for Malcolm Butler. I want to thank you, New England, and thank you for being, as a Patriots fan, for Malcolm Butler for making that play, because that made me very happy as a Niner
Patriots
fan.
legend, man. Patriots legend.
Then he got benched in the next Super Bowl or whatever, and we don't talk
Yeah,
about that.
I'll
But
have to ask. I'll have to ask you about why that was the case.
nobody
But
knows. Nobody knows. We have no idea, and they got just torched by the Eagles that Super Bowl. But no, that's a great one. It's awesome. The Hodin household still throwing all those. Did they throw one this year? They do it every year. Still
They
going?
do. I think it's probably dwindling. Like there's fewer and fewer people still sticking around
Kids
every
aren't
year.
around. Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot of my dad's college friends
Okay.
is it's kind of the base of it.
All right.
But yeah, no, it'll still definitely happen this year.
Maybe if we ever get a Patriots Niners Super Bowl with your boy Drake May leading the team, coming down the pipe here, I think we'll have to set that up. I'll fly out to the Hodin household, and we'll have to do one.
Yeah, this is a story for another podcast, but I have really enjoyed being a Patriots fan when they're not good. And
Mm,
that sounds like it's just so ridiculous for me to say that when there's plenty of football fans of other teams who would
yep.
love to have Tom Brady Patriots. But it truly did get boring. It was like
Yeah.
the regular season was just irrelevant. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter where we finish, doesn't matter what happens. We're gonna be in the playoffs and we're probably gonna make it to the Super Bowl. It's fun to like be 3-3 and have week 7 like really matter, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
I've enjoyed that part of being a Patriots fan.
I could tell you, from somebody who's experienced a lot of those years, it can wear on you.
Yeah.
It's probably taken years off my life. I'm probably living maybe 20 years. 20 years has been cut off my life, probably with the cumulative 49er stress that they've put on me. I would love them to get to that point with the Patriots are at, with Brock Purdy winning a few chips and just being like, okay, regular season doesn't matter. But fortunately for the 49ers, uh, they haven't gotten to that point yet. Maybe they'll be there soon. Maybe they'll have that memory soon. But for now, I'm hanging on to some NFC Championship wins instead of
Yep.
Super Bowl memories. But Robbie, this has been great. Really appreciate it. That was an unexpected memory. I thought for sure it'd be basketball. But I will say that play is pretty spectacular. So appreciate having you on. Like I said, I think everybody's gotten smarter. Where can people check you out at? Do you have any watch playbacks coming down the pipe for the finals here, or are you just trying to take in the game and enjoy it this time around?
Yeah, no more watch playbacks.
All right, all right.
It's having me on there. Like I'm gonna do or say something that I don't mean. Um, like yeah, I'm a liability. You can't have me on there. Like I'm gonna take my shirt off for a 3. I'm gonna do something dumb. So it's probably best that I'm not on there. But
Mm,
and you can see some of my stuff on Celtics blog. I write some
yeah,
articles there. Or just follow me on Twitter at Robbie Hodin, I think. You can find me somewhere.
I'll put
But
it
for
up there. I'll throw it up there on the video when we put this up, so
yeah,
people know where to find you.
mostly random NBA tweets. But yeah, thank you for having me. I think I appreciate those kind words, and I think you are making people smarter too. I think you got to give yourself some more credit.
You're too kind, sir. You're too kind. I try. I try my best. This brain of mine is pretty scrambled, but when I get guys like you that know the game so well and I always enjoy having a conversation about basketball with you, Robbie. So I appreciate it. And maybe we'll have you on the future if things go well. Maybe we have you back for maybe a little victory lap. But I don't. Obviously, I'm not trying to jinx anything. I'm trying to get ahead of you, but maybe potentially that could be in the future.
I look forward to it, man.
Or if you just want to commiserate too. I mean, if you're sad and you want to get things off your chest, I'm here for that. I did
Yeah,
that with the Niners this year.
in both scenarios, I'll need to talk about it with someone.
Sounds good, brother. Appreciate it. And until next time, everybody.
All right, thanks, Tom.